Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes as the clock on her tablet blinked 2:47 a.m. The gentle hum of servers and cooling fans filled her rooftop observatory, a converted storage shed that her parents had reluctantly allowed her to build after months of persistent negotiation. Michigan's autumn chill crept through the cracks, but she barely noticed anymore. "Just one more frequency sweep," she muttered, the same thing she'd been telling herself for the past 3 hours. Her fingers danced across the custom interface she coded herself, adjusting the parameters of her salvaged radio telescope. The array of repurposed satellite dishes and modified ham radio equipment looked like a junkyard art installation, but Sarah knew every wire, every connection, every homemade circuit board intimately. Her classmates at Roosevelt High thought she was weird enough already, spending her nights scanning deep space signals instead of posting on social media or sneaking out to parties. They didn't understand the thrill of exploration, the possibility that somewhere in the cosmic noise, something extraordinary waited to be discovered. The acceptance of Earth into the Galactic Scientific Council 5 years ago had only intensified her obsession. While most teenagers her age were fascinated by alien fashion trends and extraterrestrial pop music, Sarah wanted to understand the science that made interstellar civilization possible. Her latest algorithm churned through the data, converting radio frequencies into visual patterns. Most scientists thought she was wasting her time. The region she studied had been thoroughly analyzed by the Council's quantum computers and dismissed as routine background radiation from a dying star cluster. But something about the official explanation never sat right with her. Sarah's tablet chimed softly, indicating the completion of another scan. She reached for her cup of long cold coffee, knocked it over, and barely managed to save her keyboard from the spill. As she mopped up the mess with her sleeve, movement on her main display caught her eye. The visualization software was showing something different. Where there should have been random spikes and valleys of cosmic noise, a pattern emerged. It was subtle. She might have missed it if she hadn't spent countless nights staring at similar readouts. But there it was, a repeated sequence, almost like music, she whispered, her fingers trembling as she enhanced the display. The signal pulsed with a rhythm that couldn't be natural. Her synesthesia, usually a private source of embarrassment, transformed the data into sweeping ribbons of blue and gold that danced across her vision. Sarah had never told anyone about her ability to see sounds as colors and patterns. Even her parents thought she'd outgrown it. But now, watching the signal paint impossible geometries in the air before her, she wondered if this neurological quirk might be more valuable than anyone realized. She quickly ran the sequence through 3 different analysis programs, each one confirming what her senses told her. This was no random emission from dying stars. The pattern was too precise, too structured. It had purpose. The Council's quantum computers had analyzed this same region for centuries. How had they missed this? Unless they weren't looking for the right thing. They were searching for conventional transmission methods, not this elegant mathematical dance hidden in the background radiation itself. Sarah's hands shook as she started documenting her findings. The sun would rise soon, and she had school in a few hours, but sleep was impossible now. She needed to verify her discovery, run more tests, prepare her data for peer review. The scientific community would be skeptical, a 16-year-old amateur astronomer claiming to find what teams of alien experts had missed for centuries. But as she watched the signal's pattern repeat with perfect precision, Sarah knew she'd found something unprecedented. Someone, long ago, had written a message in the language of the cosmos itself, and somehow, through a combination of human intuition and her unique way of perceiving reality, she was the first person to hear it. The real question was, what were they trying to say? 3 days without proper sleep had left Sarah in a fog, but the patterns wouldn't leave her alone. They followed her through the hallways of Roosevelt High, shimmering in the corners of her vision like phantom auroras. Every sound now seemed to trigger cascading waves of color that matched the mysterious signal's rhythm. "Miss Chen," Mr. Patel's voice cut through her thoughts, bringing her attention back to advanced physics. Perhaps you'd like to share with the class what's so fascinating about your tablet." Sarah looked up to find 20 pairs of eyes fixed on her. She'd been converting the signal data into musical notation during class, trying a different approach to understanding its structure. The standard scientific analysis tools weren't designed for what she was seeing. She hesitated, then made a decision. "I found something in the Carina stellar region, a pattern in what everyone thinks is just background radiation. I can show you." Mr. Patel sighed, but his expression held a hint of curiosity. As the school's astronomy club advisor, he'd always supported her interest in space science. After class, Miss Chen. The remaining 20 minutes felt like hours. When the bell finally rang, Sarah rushed to connect her tablet to the classroom's holoprojector. The three-dimensional visualization filled the air above Mr. Patel's desk. "See these frequencies?" Sarah pointed to the dancing lines of light. "Everyone thinks they're random emissions from dying stars. But watch what happens when I run them through my music conversion algorithm." The chaotic signals transformed into an intricate musical score that floated in the air. To Sarah's synesthesia-enhanced perception, it was a symphony of color and mathematics, but she knew Mr. Patel only saw the conventional display. "The pattern repeats every 47.3 seconds, with slight variations," she explained. "I've mapped the variations against standard quantum harmonics, and they're too precise to be natural. Someone created this." Mr. Patel adjusted his glasses, studying the data. "Sarah, the Galactic Scientific Council has some of the most advanced pattern recognition systems in known space. They've analyzed this region for centuries. But they were looking for traditional communication methods," Sarah countered. "This is different. It's like someone wrote a message in the spaces between conventional frequencies. I can see it because..." She stopped herself. Revealing her synesthesia felt too risky. Who would take her seriously if they knew her discovery relied on a neurological condition that made her see sounds as colors? "Because," Mr. Patel prompted. "Because I'm approaching it differently," she finished lamely. "Look, I've converted the signal variations into a multi-dimensional musical score. There are mathematical relationships here that match theoretical models of quantum entanglement." Mr. Patel's expression softened. "Sarah, I know you're passionate about this, but you need to focus on your regular studies. Your grades have been slipping, and colleges look at more than just independent research projects. But this is important." Sarah projected another visualization. "The pattern isn't just complex, it's getting stronger. The amplitude has increased 0.03% since I first detected it 3 days ago. Something's changing out there." "What you need is sleep," Mr. Patel said firmly. "Take a break from the late-night observations. Focus on your coursework. If you still think this is significant after you've rested, we can discuss it at the next astronomy club meeting." Sarah packed up her tablet in frustrated silence. How could she make them understand? The signal wasn't just some abstract scientific curiosity. It felt urgent, almost alive. Every time she analyzed the data, her synesthesia showed her new layers of complexity, like a vast cosmic fingerprint hidden in the background radiation of space. Walking home, she made a decision. If Earth scientists wouldn't listen, maybe others would. She'd been avoiding the extraterrestrial scientific forums, knowing how they typically dismissed human researchers. But she had data they couldn't ignore. That evening, Sarah uploaded her findings to the Galactic Scientific Network, knowing she was probably condemning herself to ridicule. But as she watched the signal's colors dance across her vision once again, she knew she had no choice. The message was there, and someone had to hear it. Sarah woke to the sound of her tablet pinging continuously. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom window. She'd fallen asleep at her desk again. The clock read 6:43 a.m., but it wasn't her usual morning alarm demanding attention. Her scientific forum post had exploded overnight. Most responses were what she'd expected. Dismissive comments about human scientific limitations, jokes about primitive Earth technology, and lengthy explanations of why she was wrong. But one response stood out. A private message from Dr. Zixtal of the Centauri Coalition, containing just 3 words. You see it too. Her hands trembled as she opened his attached credentials. Dr. Zixtal wasn't just any scientist. He was the xenorchaeologist who discovered the Prometheus tablets, ancient artifacts that had revolutionized our understanding of early spacefaring civilizations. But according to recent articles, he'd been stripped of his academic positions after promoting controversial theories about mathematical patterns in cosmic background radiation. Theories that looked remarkably similar to her findings. Sarah barely had time to process this when her mother's voice pierced the morning calm. Sarah, there's some kind of ship in our driveway. Running downstairs in yesterday's clothes, Sarah burst through the front door and stopped dead in her tracks. A sleek, silver vessel about the size of a delivery van hovered inches above her family's cracked concrete driveway. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury in the morning sun. Neighbors were already gathering, smartphones raised. In the distance, police sirens wailed. Sarah's mother stood frozen on the front steps, still holding her coffee mug. Her father had emerged from the garage, wearing his usual confused expression. The ship's surface parted like curtains of water, and a figure emerged. Dr. Zixtal was tall and thin, with iridescent scales that shifted color in the sunlight. His 4 eyes blinked independently as he surveyed the growing crowd, but his attention quickly fixed on Sarah. You must be the one who posted the analysis, he said, his translator converting his harmonic language into English. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but after seeing your data, I knew I couldn't wait for official channels. 3 police cruisers screeched to a halt at the end of the driveway. Officers emerging with weapons drawn. Step away from the civilians, one shouted. Wait. Sarah moved between the officers and Dr. Zixtal. He's a scientist. He's here about my research. Your research? Her father's voice cracked. Sarah, what's going on? Dr. Zixtal raised all 4 hands in a gesture of peace. I mean no harm. I've followed proper diplomatic protocols. Your government should be receiving my credentials now. He turned to Sarah. Young human, your analysis of the Carina signal patterns matches theories I've worked on for decades. But you've taken it further than I ever could. You found the musical correlation. Sarah's synesthesia chose that moment to flare, transforming Dr. Zixtal's harmonics into brilliant spirals of green and gold. They matched perfectly with the patterns she'd been seeing in the signal. You need to come with me. The alien scientist continued as local news drones began circling overhead. The signal's amplitude is increasing exponentially. According to my calculations, we have less than 2 weeks before. He stopped mid-sentence, his scales shifting to a deep purple. Sarah followed his gaze to her tablet, which was displaying the latest signal data. The pattern had changed. This is impossible, Dr. Zixtal whispered. The frequency shift suggests. It's responding to your discovery. It knows we can see it. The police were now conferring with someone on their radios, looking uncertain. Sarah's parents huddled together on the front steps, watching their teenage daughter stand in the driveway with an alien scientist, discussing patterns that could rewrite our understanding of the universe. Dr. Zixtal, Sarah said, watching colors dance around his words. I think I know why my analysis worked when others failed. I have this condition, synesthesia. I don't just hear the patterns. I see them. The alien scientist's scales rippled with excitement. Of course, the builders would have understood that connection. Sound, light, mathematics, they're all one language of the quantum level. He glanced at the growing crowd of onlookers. We need to continue this conversation somewhere more private. Something is about to happen, something I've waited my entire career to witness. Sarah looked at her parents, then back at the alien scientist. Behind them, more sirens approached. She had a feeling her normal life had just ended, and she couldn't wait to see what would replace it. After 3 hours of government debriefings and parental negotiations, Sarah found herself in Dr. Zixtal's ship, converted into a makeshift laboratory. Her parents had only agreed after the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, vouched for the alien scientist's credentials, and on the condition that Sarah attend her classes remotely. "Your analysis software is remarkably elegant," Dr. Zixtel said, his scales shimmering with professional admiration as he studied her code. "Converting quantum fluctuations into musical notation. No one else thought to try that." Sarah watched in fascination as her tablet's display synchronized with the ship's holographic systems. Her crude visualizations transformed into stunning three-dimensional models that filled the cabin with light. "It just made sense to me," she explained. "When I hear complex sounds, I see patterns. The signal felt like music from the first moment I detected it." She hesitated, then added, "Everyone thought I was crazy." "Crazy?" Dr. Zixtel's scales flickered with amusement. "You did what the Council's quantum computers couldn't. You recognized intention in the noise. Look here." He manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a particular sequence. To Sarah's synesthesia-enhanced perception, it pulsed with deep purples and blues, like an underwater symphony. "This pattern, it's not random. It's a coordinate system unlike anything we've seen before. Instead of using conventional spatial references, it uses harmonic relationships between quantum states to define locations." Sarah's tablet chimed with an alert. The signal's latest analysis was complete. "Dr. Zixtel, something's changed." The new data transformed the holographic display. What had been a complex but stable pattern now showed distinct variations, like new instruments joining an orchestra. "It's beautiful," Sarah breathed, watching colors cascade through her vision. "But what does it mean?" Dr. Zixtel's scales shifted to a deep crimson. "It means we were right. The signal isn't just a message, it's a key. Those coordinates, they point to something massive hiding in the gap between the galaxy's spiral arms, something that's been waiting to be found." Sarah manipulated the display, following a hunch. She overlaid the original pattern with the new variations, then converted them into a musical score. The ship's systems translated her rough work into a precise mathematical framework. "Look at this." She pointed to where the patterns intersected. "It's like a countdown. The harmonics are converging on a specific point in time." Dr. Zixtel's four eyes widened. "Quantum resonance patterns. Of course. The ancient builders didn't just leave us coordinates. They left us a timetable." His scales paled. "And according to these calculations, we have 8 days before something catastrophic happens." Sarah's tablet suddenly erupted with notifications. Messages from scientific institutions worldwide, alerts from the Galactic Council, even a priority communication from the Centauri Coalition's Science Division. "They're all seeing it now," Dr. Zixtel said grimly. "The signal strength has increased enough that even conventional detection methods are picking it up, but they still don't understand what they're looking at." Sarah watched the colors dance around her, telling a story that only she could fully see. "We need to go there," she said. "To the coordinates. Whatever's hiding out there, it's waking up." "It's not that simple," Dr. Zixtel cautioned. "The coordinates point to a region of space that's been quarantined for centuries. Strange temporal phenomena, ships disappearing. The Council declared it off-limits after losing 3 research expeditions." A new pattern emerged in the holographic display, its rhythm making Sarah's heart race. The colors in her vision pulsed with increasing urgency, like a warning bell. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "The signal's getting stronger because something's about to happen. Something the ancient builders tried to warn us about." Dr. Zixtel studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll need to call in some favors, arrange for permits." His scales rippled with determination. "Pack what you need. And Sarah, better bring your tablet. Something tells me we're going to need your unique way of seeing things." Outside the ship, government officials argued with her parents while news crews gathered at the end of the street. But Sarah barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on the holographic display, where the countdown continued its relentless march toward zero. Time was running out. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Scientific Council wasn't going well. Sarah watched from a corner of the massive holographic chamber as Dr. Zixtel tried to explain their findings to 24 of the most prestigious scientists in known space. The human girl's analysis clearly shows. He began, but was cut off by Administrator Vectora, a crystalline being from the Rigel system. This is preposterous, Vectora's translation matrix crackled. You expect us to believe that a primitive human adolescent has discovered something our quantum arrays missed for centuries. Using musical notation, no less. Sarah's tablet vibrated. Another temporal distortion had just rippled through the Sol system, the third one today. She pulled up the data, and her synesthesia transformed the readings into a chaotic storm of red and black, nothing like the harmonious patterns of the original signal. Administrator, Sarah spoke up, her voice shakier than she'd hoped. While we're debating, the distortions are getting worse. Look at Mars. She transferred her tablet's display to the chamber's main hologram. The red planet appeared, surrounded by swirling distortions in spacetime. As they watched, a crater on the surface suddenly vanished, replaced by pristine terrain. Then reappeared, then vanished again, cycling between states. Temporal flux, muttered a tentacled physicist from Ta City. But the scale is impossible. Not impossible. Dr. Zixtel's scales shifted to urgent copper tones. Exactly what the builders warned us about. The dying star cluster isn't natural. It's artificial. A containment system designed to hold something far more dangerous at bay. And it's failing. The chamber erupted in argument. Sarah tuned out the overlapping translation matrices and focused on her tablet. The colors in her vision were changing, showing new patterns emerging within the chaos. She began humming softly, matching her voice to the frequencies she saw. Suddenly, the argument stopped. Everyone was staring at her, or rather, at the holographic display. The temporal distortions around Mars had stabilized, pulsing in perfect rhythm with her humming. Impossible, Vectora whispered. No, Dr. Zixtel said triumphantly. Proof. The builders understood something we've forgotten. The fundamental connection between consciousness, sound, and quantum states. Sarah's synesthesia lets her perceive these relationships intuitively. The moment was shattered by new alarms. A massive temporal wave was approaching Earth's moon, larger than any before. Sarah watched in horror as the lunar surface rippled like water. Centuries of history cycling passed in seconds. One moment Neil Armstrong's footprints appeared. The next they vanished, replaced by pristine regolith. Then ancient impact craters that shouldn't exist yet. We're out of time, Dr. Zixtel announced. The containment system is collapsing. Either we go to those coordinates now, or we risk losing everything. Out of the question, Vectora declared. The quarantine zone is restricted for good reason. No ship that's entered has ever returned. Sarah stepped forward, her tablet displaying the latest signal analysis. But they didn't have this, she said. The builders left us a key, not just coordinates, but instructions. The temporal distortions match harmonics in the original signal. They're like an echo of what's happening in the quarantine zone. And you believe you can interpret these instructions? A multi-minded collective from Vega asked. I don't just believe it, Sarah replied. I can see it. The patterns, the relationships, they're all there. We just needed to look at them differently. She took a deep breath. And if we don't go now, there won't be anything left to save. The chamber fell silent as another alarm sounded. The temporal wave had reached Earth's atmosphere. Outside the council's windows, the sky flickered between day and night, auroras dancing impossible patterns as space-time itself began to unravel. The girl goes, Vectora declared finally. And Dr. Zixtel. But not alone. I'm assigning a full research team and military escort. If there's even a chance of stopping this. Sarah barely heard the rest. Her attention was fixed on her tablet, where the countdown had accelerated. The colors in her vision swirled with increasing urgency, showing her glimpses of what waited in the quarantine zone. Something ancient, something that had been waiting for someone who could see the music in the stars. They had less than 72 hours to reach it. The research vessel, Quantum Horizon, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the quarantine zone. Sarah stood at the observation deck, watching space itself twist and writhe before her eyes. Her synesthesia transformed the quantum distortions into an aurora of impossible colors, like a symphony played in light. 3 ships lost contact in the last hour. Commander Wren of the military escort announced, her crystalline form refracting the strange energies around them. The temporal waves are spreading faster than predicted. Dr. Zixtal's scales had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. The coordinates point to the center of that. He gestured toward a region where space seemed to fold in on itself, creating patterns that hurt to look at. Sarah closed her eyes, focusing on the sounds her instruments were picking up. The signal was stronger here, no longer just a distant melody, but a full orchestral performance that painted complex equations across her mind. "We need to get closer," she said, opening her eyes. "The pattern's changing again. It's like it's trying to show us something." The ship's quantum sensors shrieked in protest as they moved forward. 3 escort vessels immediately lost power, drifting helplessly in the disturbed space. But Sarah barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on her tablet, where the signal's harmonics were reaching a crescendo. There, she pointed toward what looked like empty space. "The frequency matches exactly. This is where we need to be." Commander Wren's crystalline structure vibrated with skepticism. "There's nothing." But even as she spoke, reality seemed to part like a curtain. A massive structure phased into existence, its architecture defying conventional geometry. It was a space station, but unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its surfaces rippled with mathematical precision, each curve and angle forming part of an enormous instrument. The builders didn't just create a station, Dr. Zixtal breathed, his scales shifting through colors of awe. They built a resonance chamber for the entire galaxy. Sarah's synesthesia nearly overwhelmed her. The station wasn't just visible, it was singing. Each section vibrated at specific frequencies, creating a harmony so complex it made her dizzy. The colors in her vision formed patterns she'd only glimpsed in the original signal, now amplified 1,000-fold. "We're receiving a transmission," the ship's AI announced, "but it's not using any known communication protocol." "Let me hear it," Sarah requested. The ship's speakers came alive with what sounded like chaos to everyone else. But to Sarah, it was pure mathematics, equations expressed through quantum harmonics. Her tablet automatically began converting the transmission into musical notation, confirming what her synesthesia was showing her. "It's not just a message," she realized. "It's an invitation." The station's architecture. These aren't random shapes. They're frequency modulators, tuned to specific consciousness patterns. The builders wanted to make sure only someone who could understand their language could enter. "Understanding is one thing," Commander Wren cautioned. "Docking with that structure is another. Our navigation systems can't even process its geometry." Sarah studied the station through her unique perception. The docking ports, they're moving in rhythm with the signal. We need to synchronize with it. She turned to Dr. Zixtal. "Can your ship's systems interface with my tablet? I think I can calculate the resonance pattern." As they worked to establish the connection, a new alarm sounded. The temporal distortions were intensifying. Through the observation windows, they watched another escort ship vanish, reappear, then vanish again, caught in a time loop. "Sarah," Dr. Zixtal's voice was urgent. "Whatever you're going to do it now." Her fingers flew across her tablet's interface, translating what she saw into commands the ship could understand. The station's song grew louder, more insistent. In her mind's eye, the colors formed a clear path through the chaos, a sequence of harmonics that would align their ship with the station's quantum state. "Hold on," she warned, and initiated the sequence. As the ship began to move, following her musical flight path, Sarah finally understood why she'd been chosen to find this place. The builders hadn't hidden their greatest creation behind advanced technology or impenetrable defenses. They'd hidden it in plain sight, waiting for someone who could hear the music of the universe itself. The interior of the station defied physics as Sarah knew it. Corridors twisted through dimensions that shouldn't exist, their surfaces humming with quantum frequencies that painted her vision in cascading waves of light. Each step felt like walking through music made solid. "Remarkable," Dr. Zixtal whispered, his scales rippling with intense blues of scientific excitement. "The entire structure operates on quantum harmonics. Every surface, every chamber is precisely tuned." Commander Wren and her security team had stayed behind on the ship after their crystalline forms began resonating dangerously with the station's frequencies. Only Sarah, Dr. Zixtal, and two brave xenophysicists had ventured inside. Sarah's tablet had stopped working the moment they'd crossed the airlock threshold, but she hardly needed it anymore. Her synesthesia was showing her everything. The complex mathematical relationships encoded in the station's architecture, the flowing patterns of energy that pulsed through its systems. "This way," she said confidently, following a particularly strong harmonic that painted her vision in deep purples. "Something's calling to us." They entered a vast chamber that seemed to contain fragments of different times and spaces, all overlapping like sheets of transparent glass. Through one layer, Sarah glimpsed prehistoric Earth. Through another, she saw the death of the sun billions of years in the future. The temporal distortions, one of the xenophysicists realized. They're all connected to this room. Before anyone could respond, the chamber filled with light. It coalesced into forms that Sarah's mind struggled to comprehend. Beings of pure energy and consciousness, their thoughts expressed through quantum vibrations that her synesthesia translated into music. "We have waited," the builders spoke directly into their minds, their words creating symphonies of color in Sarah's vision. "We chose this region of space for its unique properties, a nexus point where realities intersect. Here, we built our greatest work, a machine to prevent the collapse of the multiverse itself." Dr. Zixtal's scales had gone completely white. The temporal distortions, their bleed-through from other universes. "The walls between realities grow thin," the builders confirmed. "We created this station to reinforce them, using the fundamental harmonics that bind existence together. But we could not maintain it forever. We transcended our physical forms, preserving our consciousness in quantum states, waiting for those who could understand our work." "Why me?" Sarah asked, though she was beginning to understand. "Why not the Council's quantum computers or the most advanced alien scientists?" "Because they seek to separate mathematics from music, science from consciousness. You see the truth we discovered too late, that they are all one. Your gift allows you to perceive the quantum harmonics as they truly are, the song of reality itself." The chamber shuddered. Through the overlapping time streams, Sarah watched temporal waves ravage the galaxy, spreading out from the dying star cluster that had housed the builders' containment field. "The barrier weakens," the builders' thought voices created urgent crimson patterns in her vision. "Soon, the universes will begin to collapse into each other. Billions of realities, each with countless lives, all ending in discord. How do we stop it?" Sarah asked, though fear made her voice shake. "The station must be retuned to the new harmonic frequency of spacetime. It requires one who can perceive the quantum mathematics as music, who can conduct the symphony of reality itself. But the process is dangerous. No consciousness has ever survived direct interface with the quantum harmonics." Sarah looked at Dr. Zixtal, whose scales now showed colors of deep concern. She thought of Earth, of her parents waiting anxiously for news, of all the billions of beings across countless universes who would cease to exist if she failed. "Show me how," she said firmly. The builder's energy forms pulsed with approval. "We will guide you. But remember, the mathematics must flow through your consciousness. One mistake in the quantum harmonics could shatter reality rather than save it." As the builders began explaining the procedure, Sarah watched temporal distortions tear through another layer of spacetime. The multiverse itself was coming apart at the seams, and its last hope lay in the hands of a teenage girl who saw sounds as colors. She had never been more terrified, or more ready. Sarah stood in the station's central harmonic chamber, surrounded by quantum interfaces that pulsed with light. The builders had transformed the space into a three-dimensional musical score, where every note represented a frequency that helped hold reality together. Her synesthesia showed her the music of the cosmos itself, beautiful, terrifying, and now threatening to spiral into chaos. "The interface is ready," Dr. Zixtal announced, his scales showing colors she'd never seen before, fear and hope combined. "Sarah, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted softly. "No one else can see the patterns like I can." Through the chamber's quantum windows, she watched another universe collapse, its timeline folding in on itself like paper in a fire. The builder's energy forms hovered around her, their thoughts creating harmonies that guided her understanding. "The station's quantum core must synchronize with your consciousness," they explained. "Through you, it will perceive the new harmonic frequency of space-time. But the process will expose your mind to the raw mathematics of reality." Sarah took a deep breath and placed her hands on the interface. Immediately, her consciousness expanded beyond her body. She became aware of every quantum string, every vibrating particle that made up the multiverse. Colors she had no names for flooded her vision, each representing mathematical relationships so complex they would drive most beings mad. But to her, it was all music. She began to conduct, her movements affecting gravitational waves that spanned galaxies. The station amplified her gestures, turning them into quantum adjustments that rippled through space-time. Each motion had to be perfect. One wrong note in this cosmic symphony could tear reality apart instead of saving it. Through her expanded awareness, she felt universes dying, their harmonics falling into discord. The temporal waves were accelerating, threatening to collapse all of existence into a single point of chaos. She had to find the resonant frequency that would stabilize them all. "Sarah," Dr. Zixtal's voice seemed to come from very far away. "The power readings are off the scale. Your brain activity, it's impossible." She barely heard him. The music was everything now. She could feel the quantum strings of reality vibrating in response to her conducting, each universe singing its own unique note in the cosmic chord. The challenge wasn't just hearing them all. It was finding the harmony that would let them exist together. The builder's consciousness merged with hers, showing her possibilities that human mathematics hadn't dreamed of. Time became fluid, space became negotiable, and still she conducted. Her synesthesia transformed the quantum equations into colors and patterns that her mind could grasp, could work with, could reshape. "There," she whispered, though speaking felt strange when her consciousness spanned universes. "I can hear it." The new harmonic pattern emerged from the chaos, a quantum frequency that would let multiple realities coexist without collapse. Sarah began to weave it through the fabric of space-time, using the station as her instrument. Reality itself sang in response. The temporal waves started to stabilize. Through the quantum windows, she watched universes step back from the brink of destruction, their timelines settling into new, stable configurations. The dying star cluster that had housed the builder's containment field transformed, becoming a nexus point that strengthened the walls between realities instead of weakening them. When it was done, Sarah felt her consciousness returning to her body. She opened her eyes to find Dr. Zixtal staring at her in wonder, his scales showing colors of pure awe. The builder's energy forms pulsed with approval and relief. "You have done what we could not," they communicated. "Found the harmony that lets all realities exist in balance. The station is now tuned to maintain this new configuration permanently." Sarah's legs gave out, but Dr. Zixtal caught her before she could fall. Through the windows, space looked normal again. Except now she could see the music in everything, the mathematical songs that bound all existence together. "I need to get back to Earth," she said weakly. "I have physics homework due tomorrow." Dr. Zixtal's scales flickered with laughter. "I think we can get your teacher to give you an extension. After all, you just rewrote our understanding of the universe." Sarah smiled, watching the colors dance around his words. She had gone from being the weird kid who saw sounds to the person who saved reality itself. But more importantly, she had finally found where she belonged. In a universe where mathematics and music were one, where the strangest human talents could become the key to understanding everything. The builders had been right all along. Sometimes, the greatest scientific achievements came not from advanced technology, but from seeing the world differently than anyone else.